The 365 Pro Wrestling. 365 Nation, welcome to another edition of the 365 Pro Wrestling Podcast. Today, my guest is none other than Scumbag Yates. How you doing, man?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm doing really good. I'm talking to you. I'm excited. It should be a really fun interview, and people get to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, we'll hope to see that happen today.
Well, first off, I got to ask, because it's kind of a different name. You don't usually hear it so often. How'd you get the name Scumbag?
I just kind of came up with it by myself. I got asked this at an earlier podcast, and same question, and it's like, no one really did like that kind of character. So I decided it's like, maybe I'll try to see this out and see how far I can get myself with it. And so far, it's been going pretty well with it.
It seems to really be working for you. It's definitely unique, and it stands out when I hear it on when people are reading who's on the card. When I hear that, I'm like, oh, who's that? So that's how I take it.
Yeah, exactly. And like, people don't even call me by my actual name anymore. They just always call me Scummy or Scumbag. So it's just like, I guess it caught on.
And no one means it in a derogatory way. None of your fellow workers or guys on the show. It's just that's the nickname now.
That's just it. Yeah, just like everyone else. Like you would EO or MCW Hall of Famer Eddie Osborne.
What are we doing? Oh, man. So when did you start training, and who did you train with?
So I started training 2018 in March with Rip Impact, and been with him ever since. Kind of started training after doing the third show with SKM, which is a show that I run, and was kind of him and hawing about it for like a month or two. Like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And then I decided, you know what? Let's just go for it. See what happens. And yeah, it's been there since. And I was greenlighted 3 months after, I believe. I started March and started doing shows in June. So it was pretty quick turnaround there.
That's a really quick turnaround. Sometimes it takes up to a year or even more if the people aren't getting it. So you must have really adapted quickly to the training that Rip was giving.
Yeah, because like in high school, I did amateur wrestling as well. So a lot of the stuff I was able to kind of easily incorporate into it. And with the other sports I've done, like rugby and baseball and all this stuff, training was just coming really easy to me.
That's awesome. Was there any adjustment from the amateur style? Like, we work on the left side here in pro wrestling, and in amateur you wrestle to your strong style, which I'm assuming is your right.
Normally, yes. I learned from amateur wrestling, like, to work on both sides of the stuff. Obviously, a lot of stuff that I did came from the right side, because, again, being right-handed, but I had to learn how to do it both ways, so really, doing like all the moves and all that stuff didn't really bother me that much. It was more of just kind of what kind of pacing you have to do, and running the ropes was definitely the interesting one for me right off the hop.
Everyone's always like, I just want to hit the ropes, and everyone thinks it's going to be easy. However, when you're done your first time running the ropes, your back's usually bruised up, your side's sore, and everyone's like, why does it hurt so much? I mean, it's still cable underneath some hose with some tape on it. But no one ever thinks that that's going to hurt. And I usually don't let them hit the ropes first class, but once they get to hit them, they're always complaining that the ropes hurt more than anything they ever thought they would.
Oh, yeah. Like, even if it's cable or actual rope, like both of them, I still get bruises in matches sometimes.
Now, so you got greenlit 3 months in, which is really quick, like we were saying. Who'd you debut against?
So the first show that we did a student show that I ended up doing a battle royal with like a couple other debuts. Like Johnny DeLuca debuted in there. I think Chris Logan also debuted on there. There's like 4 or 5 people that debuted. And then my first actual singles match was the day after when we did Tonham up when PWA was still doing it. And my first match I had was against Clay Wilson. So he had the great distinction of having my first.
Oh, that's awesome. Tottenham's a community where they have a street fest every year, usually around July, I believe it is, just after Canada Day. So it's always usually super hot there. Was it like that for you on that day?
On that day, yeah, because I did the past 2 years, and both days were like super hot, which was funny. The second night that we did, which just HPW students went, and took the one young kid, and we were doing the main event, the first match. And Rip kind of gave us time. It's like, oh, I think you guys are probably going to go 10. And it's like, well, we're the main event. We might go 15. We'll see what it is. Like, see how the time goes for everyone else. So a couple of guys went a little bit shorter. And then I looked at the kid. I'm like, hey, all right, we're going 15. Doing the hard 15. And he was so scared of doing it. But it ended up being a really good match for being 50 minutes in hot weather.
No, I always remember cooking in that one. So you attend a ton of shows. I see you at almost every show. Do you go mainly to study? I know you help out a lot as well. You have your sound. You also help run shows. So, like, do you try and scout as well? Like, what do you do at the shows you attend?
So, yeah, most of the times when I do go to shows, I'm either wrestling or doing sound, or sometimes both, depending on where it is. If I'm going there just to help out, I usually just help out and kind of see like what the atmosphere is like. Maybe I can see maybe a new kid for SKM and to deliver to guys like, hey, maybe we could use this guy in the future or use this girl in the future, that kind of thing. A lot of shows have been a lot of local shows, and I'm looking to try to travel out this year, which is the main focus for this year, is to try to travel, like go to Quebec or try to go to the East Coast or the West Coast and do more shows and whatnot, just to get the experience of traveling in there.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Working with different people who you don't see all the time is always a way to keep learning and growing.
Exactly.
Now, for 2020, do you have a match goal or anything that you want to hit so many matches, or you just want to have good matches with new people?
I'm just trying to do as many matches as possible. My first full year of 2019, I did have a lot of matches and I got to work with a lot of great people. And I'm just looking to continue on with that and working with new people, maybe have different matches with same people as before, and just try to work as many shows as possible.
Perfect. Now, for PWA, you've done sound, you've helped out a ton, and now in 365 you have as well, and you've wrestled for both, or you're going to wrestle for both as well. We did a story where Warhead was the evil bastard in the temple, and you're trying to help him see his ways, and he ended up attacking you, and everything happened that way, and then you end up facing him for the Pure Violence Championship. And you won the match, but you also sustained some crazy damage. Can you tell me about that day?
It always seems that whenever I have such an
I'd like to preface this. I'm going to preface this with, I'm like, don't do nothing crazy, okay?
Yeah. So what happened was during the match is that we were just doing like just a standard hardcore match, and then Warhead had a board that we were using for the finish, which had barbed wire and mouse traps in the symbol of the temple, and he ended up giving me a DVD on it. Now, the actual move itself, like everything was fine, the bump felt fine, and when I was laying there getting pinned, it just really felt like laying on a hot mat almost. And then as soon as I sat up, Mike McKelvey was the referee, and he turned to me. He's like, "Oh, it's like your back's really bleeding." I'm like, "Oh, sweet. Time to get some pictures for it, right?" I didn't notice until how bad it was until I got to the back where everyone's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. What's going on?" Finally took a picture of it. It's like, "Oh, that's what happened." But after that, as soon as the show was done, I ended up going to the hospital back in Brantford, and I ended up getting 16 stitches altogether, so it wasn't all that bad.
Jeez. I just know I've never had any issues with like the barbed wire like getting cut open like that, and I couldn't believe it. I seen the pictures and I'm like, man, this guy should just leave now. And he's like, no, wait till the show's over. And then he drives not to the Kitchener Hospital, the Brantford Hospital. You're crazy. But I appreciate you being in the match and doing all that. And it was pretty sweet. The fans really reacted when you won the Pure Violence title.
Yeah, and like that first match that I had with Warhead, where the injury happened, it definitely, I hope it left a good impression. So when I came back and actually won it, I was actually like really happy that people were happy to see me win it. And for me myself, I was happy also that my first championship was with PWA, because PWA wasn't like the first ever show I went to for indies, but it was one of the shows I went to regularly. I think I mostly went to the Cambridge and then the Kitchener and Guelph shows after. So to win the first title in PWA, somewhere where I wanted to work, was probably one of the big highlights of my career so far.
No, that's awesome. I really like that. So growing up though, did you know about indies, or like was it only WWE and like WCW, CW at the time, or what did you know when you were growing up about wrestling?
So the earliest memory that I had of wrestling was watching WWE. I remember like I used to have like a tube TV that only had 3 channels, and one of them was Global, that was showing Raw at the time, and I knew it was Global because they had like the red and white parental discretionary and all that stuff, and then South Park would be after Raw. So I started watching WWE, and then later on started watching WCW when I ended up having a TV that actually had more channels. After the NWO formed, and then seeing ECW after that. So I didn't really know anything about indies. I did meet Bret Hart one time when I was young in Oakville at Dr. Flea's flea market. And they had a show going on there, but I didn't really know what was going on with it, just because I was just there to see Bret Hart, right?
Yep.
Then my first pay-per-view I went to was WCW Mayhem in Toronto, which that was a cool experience. But then I didn't go to an indie show until 2008, where my first show was with GWN and in Brantford, and that's where I ended up meeting Chris DiCarvello and Adam Beasley and Colin Esposito and Jason Betancourt, and that's how my introduction into becoming a chant monkey began, was in 2008 with those guys.
And you guys had like a chant monkey is like a great thing. Like you guys went to so many shows, did so much stuff for Ontario Indie Wrestling, and Chris still does. And you're involved even more heavily now. Do you have any memories like going to shows? Like, was it just having a good time, enjoying some bevies, some smoke, and some wrestling, or like what was it all about that bonded you guys?
Pretty much. How it started, like how I met them, was I was working at Swiss Chalet at the time, and I had a buddy, Steven Slater, who we became friends with through wrestling, like just talking through wrestling at work and whatnot. And then it was like, oh, there's a show down the street there. So he was friends with Chris and all of them. So I joined them and started talking with them. And then I ended up exchanging numbers with Chris after that show. And he's like, hey, it's like there's another show happening next weekend. Are you busy or whatnot? It's like, no. It's like, okay, let's just go. I can't remember what the show was. But yeah, we just ended up just going on there, and then started hanging out with them more and more, and just kind of had this bonding of wrestling and just being shit disturbers really at shows. So it was a great way to start into indie wrestling.
X5 Nation, I hope you've been enjoying this podcast with Scumbag Yates. Now, we're going to take a little pause again, and we're going to bring you back part 2 tomorrow. So I hope you've been enjoying. Tomorrow we're going to talk more about his influences on wrestling, winning the PWA Pure Violence Championship, and a whole lot more. Thank you guys so much. And again, if you need tickets to 365 Pro Wrestling events, February 22nd, we're in Campbell River. February 29th, we're in Kitchener. All you got to do, check out 365prowrestling.com and order yours today. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.